So how do the secular geologists, mainstream science, how do they explain how Gurry formed?
Well, they are using the current rate of movement up the coastline, but they're giving it then many, many years, hundreds of thousands. In fact, they would argue that Gurry is somewhere in the order of 700,000 to 1.2 million years old. And so what they're arguing is that that current rate of sand is moving up to Gurry, being deposited there. Wind is then blowing and sand dunes are being formed. But when they look then at the parabolic sand dunes, they see different sand dunes with slightly different features. And they therefore argue that there must have been sequences of extra sand coming in. And so to explain that, what they do is they link that to the apparent multiple ice ages that they argue happened. And that each time the ice melted and the sea level rose, it added more sand to Gurry as well. And that created a whole new parabolic set of dunes that overrode the ones that had been previously deposited, as we mentioned earlier. And so they see that as a sequence of both sand moving up and multiple flushes of sand from various ice ages and their melting.
Right, so it's not all made just from that longshore transport or the movement of sand up the coast. There's another factor of the ice ages.
To account for the volume of sediment, yes.
A different source, okay. So you don't agree with this view. Can you explain that?
Well, if we go back to the Ice Age, first of all, the argument for an Ice Age is simply to try and find a date for the island, because it's extremely difficult to get a radiometric date from the island. So I don't see the need to link the formation of Gurry to the ice ages and that all those parabolic dunes are derived from each ice age. I don't see that need at all. And the two reasons I don't see that need is because, firstly, the parabolic dunes do not seem to differ too much from each other to represent the long time periods between those ice ages. One would have expected to see bigger differences in landscape development, in podozoic soil development, in all of those things there as well. And also, I do not see the podozoic soils or the coffee rock as needing that period of time is another argument they give, that it needs almost 1 million years. I do not see that at all from my own research.
So podozoic soils, that sounds important. Why don't you think it takes hundreds of thousands of years for that to develop?
Well, interestingly, I did spend part of my life in Finland. And Finland, the land is still emerging slowly out of the Baltic Sea after the previous ice age. And in that land, on that surface, you're actually seeing podozoic soils developed. But the research that's gone into that, and a lot of research, has shown you that you'll actually identify it as a podozoic soil in about 100 years. That's all it takes. And they are now estimating that the full development of a podozoic soil, with its leached upper and nutrient-rich lower section, is in the order of about 1,000 years, perhaps 5,000 years at a maximum. Now, we can't really compare Finland to Australia. I would say Finland is more challenged in developing a podozoic soil because of its tundra, its cold conditions, temperatures are not suitable, rainfall's not suitable. You come to Gurry, you have the perfect environment. You have sand, which is going to be readily leached. You have high humidity. You have great rainfall. In other words, the speed of the podozoic soil would have been much less in time than that which is occurring in Finland. So therefore, I do not see why the argument is put forward that these podozoic soils and coffee rocks, which are derived from the podozoic soils, are actually needing hundreds of thousands, if not 1 million years.
Yeah, so if they're much more challenging to develop in Finland and they developed relatively quickly,
yes,
there's no reason we should believe they took much longer at Gurry to develop.
Correct. I don't see the logic that connects those, that you'd argue that when you've got ideal conditions here and difficult conditions there.
Cool. Well, thanks for sharing that today and summarising that. I know next time I visit Gurry, I'm going to be seeing everything now with that biblical historical view, and I'll understand why things are there, why the perched lakes are there, and why there's different layers. That's going to be really fascinating. Now,
It is. It's a wonderful, how do I put it? It's a wonderful human experience to see the glory of God expressed in such a young environment. We know it's young. We see the diversity. We see the, in a sense, the connectivity of these environments, these ecosystems, these lakes, these sand dunes. It's an incredible human experience. And when I've taken people up there, even politicians, they absolutely sit, whoa, I have never seen anything like this before. And so it's a wonderful way of expressing God's love for us and his ability to be creative, all in one very small space. So well worth going to.
Fantastic. Well, that's an interesting point. We've actually got a documentary, Evolution's Achilles Heels, and this talks about a lot of different things like evolution in biology, but of more focus today in geology as well. And it talks about the biblical view rather than what we hear all the time in mainstream science. And I think for people who are really interested in this interview, I'm sure they'd be interested in some of the other geology information in this documentary. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Well, that particular DVD is brilliant because you are dealing with a host of experts sharing their experience and their knowledge and their love of our Lord. Incredible. If a person wants to go beyond that, I would strongly recommend the Creation magazine. That is our number one. That is the one that has helped many of our own family, my wife and myself, who are non-Christians. It has helped them come to Christ. The Creation magazine even has an article in the issue that's right now has been published, even as we speak, right at this moment, which deals with various features that we are talking about, landscapes and so on. And each issue will deal in a balanced way with biology, geology, astrophysics, a children's section, an interview with a top Christian and so on. That is another way to stay up to date, particularly with landscapes, whether they be coastal or otherwise. And so that material there, and the other book I mentioned, Biblical Geology 101, is a new publication, and again covers a broader range, but will help every person who looks at it and reads it or listens to it to really come to grips with the creation message, and how particularly when you look at the world today, you're just going to see a magnificent post-flood, and you're not going to look at it anymore going, that's pretty. You're going to go from here on in, no, that's a reflection of Noah's flood and the beauty that even came out of it afterwards.
That's great. If you're interested in Creation Magazine, there's a link in the description below, and there's another link for a free stream of our documentary. Thanks, Ron.
Thank you.